So this has been sitting for a little while in between sessions, and the main reason for that is so that I can come back to it with fresh eyes and kind of look at it a little bit in between. And things that you don't see when you're working on it versus coming back to it uh, can really change the direction of the drawing. And if you really are willing to go back in and revisit and resolve the issues that are going on, you can take the drawing really a lot further than you normally would.
It's been 7 hours and 50 days since you took your love away. I go out every night and sleep all day since you took your love away. Since you
Okay, so I've put several hours into this drawing, getting it to this stage. And I really wanted to do it in this manner to show you that you didn't need to start with lines and work towards the values, that you could start with the values and then end up following the values to give yourself the lines. And it takes a while before you start getting a depth to the drawing, but once that starts to happen, you start to be able to connect the surface planes. And for example, here in the bottom of the eye where the tear gland there, as it kind of planes up into the nose, you know, that I worked back and forth between the nose and the tear gland before I was able to figure out what was going on in that area in between those sort of softer shadows. And that's really what comes from spending the time building up the value structure in a drawing. You really get that sort of depth. And you can see how it goes around the side of the head and drops back to the ear now. A little bit better anyway. You could always go in more. I could pour hours into this endlessly and refine it, you know, more and more and more, and it would change it dramatically. It'd be worth it depending on what you're after. But for this drawing, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of pull out a few lines like you see going on in the cheekbone there, little folds in the eye and stuff like that. So I'll work on that a little bit. I'm going to clean up the eyes and put some eyebrows into it and pretty much finish it off. My hope is that I will also do a little bit of highlighting at the very end to even push the value structure a little bit more. And the real lesson in here is that now is the time to put detail into the drawing. Until you have a solid value structure to deal with, you're really just putting lines down on paper. You're not really building any form or anything. You can see how the brow bone comes forward a little bit better than it did before, that sort of thing. This is the stage where now I have a brow bone to work with. I can go in over the brow bone and I can start pulling some of the hairs of the eyebrow over there. I have a real eyelid to work with, and I can start pulling out some eyelashes and a few little details like that. Keep in mind that without those details, it still has a finished look to it, and that's the sort of what happens with drawing. Is there's a range of sort of levels of finish to a drawing. Detail isn't where it's all at, but because you don't often get a chance to work with detail, like directly from sort of what had me working on it in a single drawing, this is a good chance to kind of go in there and explore that a little bit. You see, I have the hair going over here a little bit and going up to sort of the sideburns. There's an excellent video by Robert Beverly Hale that talks about putting the hair on the human face, talks about the beards, and really breaks it down into 7 distinct beards. So they have regions that they sort of originate in and then they connect up, much like the planes on the face. And so it's really worth taking a look at that video. And that video is Robert Beverly Hale from the Art Students League of New York. And I'm not sure which one in the series. It's the head and facial features in that series. It's a series of 7 videos available in most libraries. Okay, so I'm going to get this. It's going to take a while to do this. But it will change it dramatically. And I don't think I'm going to mess with the shadows anymore. You can see I'm starting to get more and more depth. I could keep on doing that and really deepen it, but we have other drawings to make. So now that I have a relative, the shapes are pretty close. I've measured them a few times. They're still not exact, but I gotta keep on moving forward. What I've done is kind of keep laying out the outside ring of the iris and then blending it to give myself a kind of a body of charcoal to work over. Now I'm trying to get some sort of the fibrous direction of this before I start defining any any of the little details in terms of reflection and stuff like that. So I'm again just getting a nice surface where I have some direction to the surface and it's not just flat. And I'm just using the existing material that's down there. And I'll clean it up once I get it kind of blended in like this. I keep reinforcing the dark edges of the outside of the eye. I think I've refined it to the point where I'm not going to change the shape or the size of it too much. This looks a little bit small in there. So right now again I'm getting a direction. Like what I've been doing here, just following the surface, getting a little texture as well as line and value. And once I start getting that, then I've got a general shape to work with, and I'll even them out a little bit, although I like this glow over here. Now, what we're looking at when we're looking at the colored part of the eye is we're looking at the cornea covering the iris, and the cornea is this little rounded disc, a little cup that goes right over the eye, and it catches light. And so what happens is when it catches light, let's say in this case the light's coming from this side, it creates a little bright spot where it catches this sort of hemisphere as it goes up the top of the hemisphere, and it doesn't stop at the iris, it actually goes into the pupil area as well because it's a shine on the surface of that. And then what happens is as it passes through that disc, it reappears on the other side of that disc as well because it's passing through in a sort of a sideways fashion like that. So you don't always just have the black of the eye isn't just black. It basically has reflection over the entire surface of that. Now the light's coming from two different directions, so I do have to kind of look at it. It's a little bit different on this side. That might be confusing to the viewer, so I might just kind of like even it out here so that the eyes match a little bit more. But there's that light coming from the outside of the eye right here. And it's going in the bottom part of the disc, and then it's shining through and then illuminating it on the other side again. Again, that shine doesn't stop there. There's not a bump there. It's actually a continuous surface, so that shine will go over your pupil as well. Okay, and though those pupils black underneath, you might get a little bit more of a, you can see the outline of it underneath there. It gives me a basic shine for that to work with. I'm probably not going to detail it like crazy. Just, I spent a lot of hours on this already, and I don't want to just keep on doing it. Okay, so again, get that some of that texture that's in the eye. I want to keep reinforcing the dark edges because I don't want it to suddenly get really bright. You know, I want the relationship of the dark edges and the bright highlights to really make it shine. And so getting a shine in the eye means getting your contrasting darks and lights right up next to one another. Okay, a little bit more of the shadow cast by the lid in here. Keep going back and refreshing that. Maybe pick up a little bit of a black in the actual pupil. I'll do the same thing over here. You have light shining up, so I probably do want to kind of make sure I get it nice and dark on the bottom part of it. This edge here. I think it's pretty dark. This light is actually shining more from a sideways direction. And then I'm going to just blend that edge in so it doesn't sit right on the surface all flat. And I can follow the roundness of that shape. Do the same with the pupil. You know, drawing this scale doesn't need to be razor sharp because you're not really going to view it from right up close, but you can get it razor sharp if you spend the time to do that, if that's what your goal is. A little more charcoal on this one, maybe. Again, refresh that little bit over top of the eye. That cast shadow by the lid and the brow. And this is why you don't put that line in first. When you put it in now, you know it's in the right spot. You've got something to follow. And you don't have to change it. And you could fuss with the eyes as much as you want at this stage. And you've done a lot of the work to lay the eye out at this stage, so you can kind of stop measuring for a moment and then just get into the actual shine that you're seeing in the eye. And work both additively and reductively. So my eraser is shredded by the time I'm done with a drawing like this. I haven't done this. You can sharpen your charcoal with a little piece of sandpaper or a little like a nail file type of board. I'm going to take the highlights out again as best I can with an eraser. Actually, I'm going to erase them out and then draw that shape in to emphasize it. Okay, so that's some of the detail, but again, that happens after you have the form refined. Once you have an eye socket to work over, it's going to be easy to figure out where the hair goes. Once you have the nose coming forward, you're going to be able to figure out how that nostril looks from looking straight on. Now what I haven't done is sort of a cheat, and I may do that after I spray fix it. I'm not sure if I'm ready to spray fix it yet, but what you do, a little cheat, is focused here, there we go. What you do to push the value structure and the final run essentially is after I spray fix it, I will go back into it and I'll just touch it with some white Conte, and I'll bring those whites back up and I'll highlight it again, and that'll bring a little bit of a shine into the eyes. That will also bring the tip of the nose forward. So that's pretty much the direction this is going. Again, getting some folds in the forehead, then putting the lines in so they have a surface to go over. Could probably fuss with these quite a bit more, but I fussed with this drawing enough. Okay. Okay, so workable spray fixative. Use it on your drawings to lock down layers. Also, if you want to make your drawing go darker and you're not able to do that, you can spray a layer on this, and that will give you a new tooth you can add charcoal to over top of it. So you can keep on darkening and darkening and darkening as you do this. The downside is you won't be able to move things around very easily once you put this down. In order to do that, you'll have to take a light sandpaper and hit the surface. Basically, this is kind of a layer over top of it that will lock it down into the fiber of the paper. What I want to do is I want to work over top of it with a different material, with the Conte for the highlights, and I don't want it to mix in with the charcoal, so I'm going to lock it down with a layer of spray fixative. Again, work this out, or use this outside with cross draft, by open window. We want the air moving. You don't want to be breathing it in for long periods of time, and please read the label on the back. Okay, all right. It's very simple to use, and you can do. Usually you do a couple of layers, 2 or 3 layers, but depending on how much material you have down, you may use more. And the technique is very simple. I'm just about 10 to 12 inches from the surface. I go back and forth in even bands. You can see how it darkens it slightly, so you can use it to build the contrast a little bit. That's why I don't normally use it, because what I'm doing with the Conte, I don't want to mix the charcoal, so I'm going to put a good layer over top of it. And you overlap the bands as you do it. And just give it a couple of minutes. It'll dry off a little bit. You can smell it, very strong smell. What you might do is take it, reorient it, so you can have your bands of spray fix go in a different direction. Now you can do this as many times as you want. You don't have to do it. It won't lock your drawing down entirely, so you still can rub it around a little bit. So it's a choice whether to use it. Again, I'm working another material over top of this, so I want to lock it down so it doesn't mix quite as easily as it might. And it's a little thicker in the bottom here, so I can go a little heavier. Give it a couple more minutes to dry, and I'll do it one more time, and that will be it. Okay, simple stuff to use. Right now I can smell it like crazy. I wouldn't want to take this drawing into the classroom or into the studio and let it sit. And I'll come back to this in about 2 minutes. The thing with a drawing like this is that now that I'm really starting to see where the light is, where the plane shift, I want to go into it over and over again. It's hard to really stop at this point. You have to kind of make a call. Where are you going to take it in terms of the level of detail? And it'll usually develop in stages. There's some things I'd like to even out. I can add, so I should say I can add on top of this material, but I can't remove. You can't go too far away because it won't hit the paper hard enough and stick. And you can't go too close because then it'll get too much on in a condensed area and it will bleed and run. But it's pretty user friendly. Okay. And that's Spray Fix-It.